Suleiman bin Daud could hardly speak for laughing. He leaned back, all weak and hiccupy, and shook his finger at the butterfly and said, "Oh, great wizard, what is the sense of returning to me my palace if at the same time you slay me with mirth?" Then came a terrible noise, for all 999 queens ran out of the palace shrieking and shouting and calling for their babies. They hurried down the great marble steps below the fountain, 100 abreast, and the most wise Balkis went statelily forward to meet them and said, "What is your trouble, O queens?" They stood on the marble steps, 100 abreast, and shouted, "What is our trouble? We were living peacefully in our golden palace, as is our custom, when upon a sudden the palace disappeared, and we were left sitting in a thick and noisome darkness. And it thundered, and jinns and afrits moved about in the darkness. That is our trouble, O head queen, and we are most extremely troubled on account of that trouble, for it was a troublesome trouble, unlike any trouble we have known." Then Balkis, the most beautiful queen, Suleiman bin Daud's very best beloved queen, that was of Sheba and Sabi, and the rivers of the gold of the south, from the desert of Zin to the towers of Zimbabwe, Balkis, almost as wise as the most wise Suleiman bin Daud himself, said, "It is nothing, O queens. A butterfly has made a complaint against his wife, because she quarreled with him, and it has pleased our lord Suleiman bin Daud to teach her a lesson in low speaking and humbleness, for that is counted a virtue among the wives of the butterflies." Then up spoke an Egyptian queen, the daughter of a pharaoh, and she said, "Our palace cannot be plucked up by the roots like a leek for the sake of a little insect. No, Suleiman bin Daud must be dead, and what we heard and saw was the earth thundering and darkening at the news." Then Balkis beckoned that bold queen without looking at her, and said to her and to the others, "Come and see." They came down the marble steps, 100 abreast, and beneath his camphor tree, still weak with laughing, they saw the most wise king, Suleiman bin Daud, rocking back and forth with a butterfly on either hand, and they heard him say, "O wife of my brother in the air, remember after this to please your husband in all things, lest he be provoked to stamp his foot yet again, for he has said that he is used to this magic, and he is most eminently a great magician, one who steals away the very palace of Suleiman bin Daud himself. Go in peace, little folk." And he kissed them on the wings, and they flew away. Then all the queens, except Balkis, the most beautiful and splendid Balkis, who stood apart smiling, fell flat on their faces, for they said, "If these things are done when a butterfly is displeased with his wife, what shall be done with us when we have vexed our king with our loud speaking and open quarreling through many days?" Then they put their veils over their heads, and they put their hands over their mouths, and they tiptoed back to the palace, most mousy quiet. Then Balkis, the most beautiful and excellent Balkis, went forward through the red lilies into the shade of the camphor tree, and laid her hand upon Suleiman bin Daud's shoulder, and said, "O my lord and treasure of my soul, rejoice, for we have taught the queens of Egypt and Ethiopia, and Abyssinia, and Persia, and India, and China, with a great and memorable teaching." And Suleiman bin Daud, still looking after the butterflies, where they played in the sunlight, said, "O my lady and jewel of my felicity, when did this happen? For I have been jesting with a butterfly ever since I came into the garden." And he told Balkis what had been done. Balkis, the tender and most lovely Balkis, said, "O my lord regent of my excellence, I hid behind the camphor tree and saw it all. It was I who told the butterfly's wife to ask the butterfly to stamp, because I hoped that for the sake of the jest my lord would make some great magic, and that the queens would see it and be frightened." And she told him what the queens had said and seen and thought. Then Suleiman bin Daud rose up from his seat under the camphor tree, and stretched his arms and rejoiced, and said, "O my lady and sweetener of my days, know that if I had made a magic against my queens for the sake of pride or anger, as I made that feast for all the animals, I should certainly have been put to shame. But by means of your wisdom I made the magic for the sake of a jest, and for the sake of a little butterfly, And behold, it has also delivered me from the vexations of my vexatious wives. Tell me therefore, O my lady of my heart, how did you come to be so wise? And Balkis, the queen, beautiful and tall, looked into Suleiman bin Daud's eyes, and put her head a little on one side, just like the butterfly, and said, First, O my lord, because I loved you, and secondly, O my lord, because I know what women folk are. And they went up to the palace, and lived happily ever afterwards. Wasn't it clever of Balkis? There was never a queen like Balkis, from here to the wild world's end. But Balkis talked to a butterfly as you would talk to a friend. There was never a king like Solomon, not since the world began, but Solomon talked to a butterfly as a man would talk to a man. She was a queen of Sabea, and he was Asia's lord, but they both of them talked to butterflies when they took their walks abroad. And that is the end of The Butterfly That Stamped, and it is also the end of the Just So stories. Thanks for watching.